Original characters. Whether you're a dedicated fan artist or a strictly OC creator, everyone has made an OC at some point in their lives. They could be a fan character, or a random design you had stewing in your head for a while. Maybe they were made specifically for a personal project. And that brings us to the main subject of today's video. If any of you are familiar with me on Instagram, by any chance you all know I literally will not shut up about my characters. I have major brain worms for them. I love my little goobers. And since I started doing YouTube again, I thought what better way to kick off my channel than to make a video explaining the history behind my comic. I will be talking about the lore behind my webcomic, The Tale of Crystal Teresa, while redrawing an old piece, but turning it into an original illustration. Let's get right into it. Our story begins in 2016 when I was a 15-year-old in middle school. Just like any other artistic hormone-fueled teenager, I obviously enjoyed drawing, coming up with character designs, and story concepts. Not only was it a lot of fun, but it was also a great outlet for my deeply troubled soul at the time. Around this period, I also discovered Fanime YouTube. If you're not sure what that is, let me educate you a bit. A fanime is a fan-made web series in an anime art style. These series were usually made by a one-person team or a small group of people. The most popular genre of fanimes that I noticed were usually magical girl-inspired stories or parodies of already existing ones like Tokyo Mew Mew. I definitely had my faves at the time, like Magical Girl School by Shribbit, Into the Stars by Emily Loves Cookies, Supernova by Maudlin May / Latte Swirl, and The Odd Four by Ever After Ashley. Shout out to all of the creators, by the way. Now, I was hella late arriving to the fanime community because from what I remember, this genre of animation dated back to like the late 2000s to early 2010s. Look, this is just a long-winded way of me saying that Crystal Teresa was supposed to be a fanime parody originally, and was going to go under the embarrassing title of Hoseki Maho no Takane-chan. Yeah. Look, it's not like CT doesn't have a lot of anime-inspired elements despite it being more Western, but this version was a lot more stereotypically anime in a cringe-worthy way, and anytime I talk about this version, I find myself recoiling in disgust. Anywho, so with my newfound inspo, I got to working on my setup. I came up with a main cast, villains, a very bare-bones run-of-the-mill magical girl plot, and I proceed to do absolutely nothing after that. Okay, let me explain. After I had all of the basics down, I didn't really know where to go after that. I was married to the idea of this being an animated series. However, that was pretty hard for me to achieve back then because I had no idea how to animate. I didn't have a production team or voice actors of any kind, so it felt really difficult to bring this project to life. So I spent more time flirting with the idea of making a web series and not actually committing to it. However, that all changed in the summer of 2020. So after 4 years of me running around in circles and making no progress on what was supposed to be a fan animated series, I said screw it, we're making a webcomic. Honestly, I should have made it into a webcomic from the beginning, but I just didn't think of it at the time. So anyway, I had just graduated from high school in 2020, and since this was during the pandemic, I had a lot of free time on my hands, so I just thought, what better way to distract myself from the fact that the world was going up in flames than dedicating my focus on my webcomic? By this point, I learned a lot more about starting a webcomic through YouTube, so I took my newfound knowledge and applied it to this new version. I ditched the cringy weeb title, wrote out a bit more lore for my 2 made-up planets in the comic, redesigned all my characters, rewrote the plot, and wrote out 4 chapters to start the comic off. I was a lot more prepared during this time period, and then finally on January 20th, 2023, the prologue was released on Webtoon. I remember being incredibly proud of this because this was the first time I ever committed myself to a project like this. After a lot of failed story concepts, this could have been the thing to really take off, and I was so excited to see where things went with this version of the story. Until things continue to go downhill. Despite this version being a lot more well planned than the original, there were still some issues to be found. For starters, I was missing a lot of important concept art for certain areas of the project, like the fact that I didn't create a map for Bradley, the made-up town that my main characters reside in, or the fact that I didn't make a map for Leonie until November of 2023 after I released the 2 episodes. And let's talk about my work process during this time. As I established, I was a complete newbie when it came to creating a full comic series, so I didn't exactly have the best work methods, which led to me working on Chapter 1 for 8 months. I really started on this in March of 2023 and released it in October of 2023. That's ridiculous. And you're probably wondering, Rainy, why didn't you just shorten your chapters and make it into the typical webtoon length episode? Because I was dumb and I love making things more unnecessarily difficult for myself. But yeah, I managed to get the first chapter out, but I was super burnt out for a bit. Of course, that didn't stop me from making the same dumb mistake of working on chapter 2 for 9 months, like I didn't learn my lesson the first time. Funny enough, once I reached October of 2024, then I decided to go back and split up chapter 1 and 2, so it would be shorter and easier to easier to digest. And to think I wasted all of those months working on those long chapters while slowly losing my crap. I will say reconstructing my chapters so that they were in the webtoon episode format did make a huge difference, but it was a little too late by then, because once I published the 10th episode by December of 2024, I came to the sad realization that I wasn't having that much fun or gaining any joy from working on this version of the story anymore. Even though I'll give my young adult self some credit, I put a lot more effort and time into finally bringing this story into existence, but despite all of that, there are just so many creative hiccups that suck the energy and the joy out of this comic. Besides that, I still was not happy with the overall direction of the comic. Despite all of the planning and lore, I had everything still despite all of the planning and lore I had, everything still felt hella half-baked to me, and it didn't feel like I really wrote out the story with my own interest in mind, and just went with what I thought everyone would want to see, so it made for a somewhat generic premise still. So I made the tough decision to discontinue the 2023 version of Crystal Teresa and just refer to it as a beta. And that leads us to where we are currently with the progress of the comic. Okay, so unlike the beginning, when I actually started developing this comic, I didn't start completely over. More so, I just axed a couple of things and built off of what I currently have. Because here's the thing, I actually like the base of what I created. I just felt like there could have been more to it. So I started brainstorming hardcore, figuring out what exactly I did not like about the 2023 beta. For starters, I wasn't truly satisfied with how I designed the characters. I mean, they're a huge step up from their early designs, but it still wasn't enough. Secondly, I still wasn't satisfied with the plot of the story. It felt like any other premise of the general Mahou Shoujo genre, which of course isn't to say that all Mahou Shoujo animes follows the same plot, but overall it fell into the basic formula one, and I just was not vibing with that. So after I figured out what I wasn't happy with, I started to correct it. I changed all the main cast's design and reconstructed the plot into something a little more interesting. Then by February the 26th, I released the first chapter of the new and improved Crystal Teresa. I will say, even though I'm still kind of working some things out as I go along, words cannot describe just how proud I am of this version of the story. Once I stopped coming from the perspective of creating something I think others would like to see and start creating something that I would be interested in reading, it became a lot more fun for me. This is definitely a foreign feeling for me. I've never felt more proud and self-assured as something I've made, and I would love to see where this version of the story goes. Alrighty, that will conclude the video. If you managed to make it to the end of the vid, congrats! Even though I'm not a big channel, I've been very appreciative of the support I've received so far. Oh, speaking of support, I would like to also thank the people that have been reading the updated version of Crystal Teresa. I've been really enjoying the feedback I'm getting, and I'm genuinely so happy with the way things are going, and I really hope you continue to support me through this journey. Until then, I guess, like, share, and subscribe, or whatever YouTubers say, and, you know, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.